Yo, this is a new video just because I wanted to do a little promo, maybe Fat Llama or a Facebook page about all the weapons that I've got. I'll probably get around to doing the shields, but let's do like the swords and axes and all that cool stuff first. So to start off with, this is my Crusader sword. It's obviously kiddie size, but for my green screen it's perfect because if it's too big then it's going to pop out the sides and probably got the top, and you never know what's going to happen with it. So I use this in my Crusader Epic. It's got the crosses here, cross there, and this is a straight up sort of knight sword. The real authentic ones obviously be very expensive, and also getting the right size via Amazon is very tricky because Amazon caters a lot for cheap Chinese products, fast production, and a lot of kids. And if you don't check the right sizes, you end up a lot of times with this. And when I first got it, I was super excited about it. It was cool, it looks great, and that's what I always care about, that it looks authentic. And I don't care about like if it's lightweight or something. That's all about like the acting and, you know, of the action basically, and see what happens. Okay, but that's enough about the Crusader sword. This holster I've had for a while, so this is multi-purpose, fits pretty much all swords. I keep getting new holsters every now and then, but yeah, it fits great with this one. But that's the Crusader sword. Let's move on. Right, this is my Greek sword. This is basically, I use this for my Descendant epic, which was a Spartan Greek Roman epic, and I use this specific for like Alexander's battles. This is kind of very similar to kind of like possibly Persian or Greco-Roman kind of era type swords. Don't know the exact name, but they usually have quite a wide sort of end at the end, so that won't fit into the holster, but it looks kind of good like nonetheless. So these are obviously all plastic, all very cheap, lightweight, but in the end, you know, as long as it looks good, because I'm buying lots of stuff, and if I just invested in really expensive stuff, I wouldn't have all this kit, which means I wouldn't have all these weapons. But yeah, so check out my Descendant epic. This is mainly for the Alexander the Great stuff, all the scenes with him and the Persian battle of Gaugamela. If you've seen the film, it wasn't very good, but the battles were really accurate. It was really well researched, so that was probably the highlight of the films. All the rest was a bit hokey pokey, the accents, the acting, and all that stuff. I mean, good cast, but yeah, it wasn't very good. It was all the stones like flops, so sadly didn't do that well, but anyway, it did impress me and it helped me with my research. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this was part of my Roman epic, so also part of Descendant. This is the Gladius. I just made a cheap sheath here because obviously I couldn't get one, so a lot of stuff through Amazon, you get the swords, but then you don't really get sheaths unless you spend like quite a lot, you know, and they'll probably be the real deal. But it was kind of good enough for what I needed. And it's actually like pretty accurate to what the real size would have been, maybe slightly larger. So whenever I order this stuff, I never know if it's going to come out too small, too big, or whatever. It's always a bit of a mystery and a surprise until it's finally in my hands. But yeah, it looks great, feels great, and is basically like the actual Gladius design as well. So it's not like too tweaked. And this is a bit more sort of adult size opposed to like kiddie size. I think it's a bit too big for a kid, to be honest. But yeah, that's the sheath that I made. The holster doesn't fit in my holster there, so I was just sort of holding it like a little Roman soldier and stuff like that. I don't know if it came out in the gladiator sequences, but they would have had this throughout, you know, hundreds of years of the Roman Empire, and used a lot in gladiator battles, gladiator arenas as well. But yeah, that's it for the Gladius. Now this one I got last year. This is called the King's Sword. Again, it's really kiddie size, but I got it because it looked like kind of cool with all these designs and emblems in there, and it's great like in the holster on its own. And then I'll have like other weapons, so this is kind of like a backup sword. I call these like in-between sword and daggers just because the size is quite ridiculous. So it's like accurate ratio wise for a kid, but for an adult obviously it's way too small. But like I explained, you know, for the green screen it's kind of handy because I can't have them too big anyway, you know. Ideally I would like real size, but that's impossible with my tiny little budget, so hence the tiny budget, I get the tiny swords. So it's kind of like a large dagger, if you will, opposed to an actual sword. But yeah, that's the King's Sword. I've had a few rental requests about this one, but then I always tell them that it's kid size, and then they kind of like disappear. They never contact me again. I always offer, I've got other swords, I've got many swords and axes. But yeah, this is one of my latest. I mean, it's got cool like sort of kinks and stuff in there as if it's seen some damage in some battle. So they did do a little bit of effort with the painting. But yeah, it's up to you to decide whether you like it. This next one is my pirate sword. So I'm probably going to use this in my next epic as one of the Arabic swords. I don't know if they had so much the hilts, but they did have the curved end of the blade. And I kind of like it because it's foam, it's not like plastic. And this kind of fits in the holster as well. I did a pirate epic and I didn't have this one yet at the time. I had another little flimsy sword, which I don't really use as much anymore because when you wave it around, it wobbles quite a bit. So this one doesn't wobble as much. It's a bit more sturdy because the foam is actually better. It's got kind of a hard inside and then like a foam sort of rubber on the outside, and then obviously like painted or whatever. It's made from those cheap materials. Again from China, but this is kind of the Pirates Caribbean sort of Jack Sparrow kind of type sword, with like the little kink at the end. I think it's quite cute. Don't know what this bit does, but either way, it's got like a little hand grip, which I think is quite cool. But yeah, check it out in Fat Llama, or you can see some of my promos, and that's the pirate sword. All right, let's move on. So this one I got from an ex-epic for basically the Anatolia kind of Arabic kind of scenes, where I go to Jordan and Palestine. I really like this. This is kind of a training sword. It's got a good weight to it. It's really sturdy. So again, this is like the kind of the rubber, the foam with a bit of plastic on top. The fact it's black isn't totally accurate, but that kind of suits me for the green screen, because if it's any too silvery, too shiny, reflective, then obviously there's issues and sometimes it disappears. So anyway, that's a good one. That's a really cool like feel, you know, when I hold it and kind of like when I kind of practice and stuff like that. As I said, it's a training sword, so it's really kind of handy for that. But yeah, I think that's on Fat Llama. I don't know, if not certain, but yeah, you can always contact me and stuff like that, and then we can negotiate. But yeah, it's got really cool hilt there, so basically that's like a little crown. But this is the Arabic type sword with a bit of curvature. Yeah, shame it's black, but this one also is, oh, it's made in Taiwan actually. Oh, not China. Wow, that's a miracle. So maybe that's why it's better stuff from Taiwan. Don't order from China. Yeah. All right, but let's move on. Okay, so this is my cheap plastic pirate sword that I got from my pirate epic. This is basically the recommended stuff that you buy when you sort of buy a pirate costume. So I got this one. This like dangly bits, I didn't really like it, so I cut them off. I don't know what they were for. This is definitely not the Pirates Caribbean sword. Again, it's kids size, but it's kind of in between. So like we did a lot of hacking and slashing for the pirate epic as we're going through the jungle. And then this one is made in China. Surprise, surprise. So it's got a little bit of a wobble to it, but yeah, for stills and all that, it kind of looks pretty cool. And if you're doing kind of slow motion hacking and all that, it's fine. But if you do anything too quick, then obviously it wobbles at the end. And I'm not very proud of this one, but hey ho, you know, it's still like got the cool sort of hilt there, the arm guard or hand guard, which they did kind of develop during the pirate age, during all the sieges and stuff. I think it was just to kind of have the extra protection when they were sort of fighting on the ships and stuff like that. But yeah, it's got cool little design here. So this is, again, I kind of bought it because it looked really cool, and then obviously you never really know until you get it. So like a lot of costumes and items that I bought, it's sort of a bit flimsy until you actually have it, and then you either send it back or you keep it. I actually painted some schmutz over there, you know, I think it got a little bit scratched or whatever. But yeah, that's the other pirate sword. I do recommend the Jack Sparrow sword over this one. But yeah, just to show you, I don't know, it does look cool. All right, let's move on. Okay, so you probably saw the Spartan dagger at one point, but I ordered this as well for the Spartan Epic, my Descendant one. And when it arrived, I was just like blown away by how huge it was. So I don't say this is totally authentic. I mean, maybe size-wise, some of the blade, yeah, with this whole kind of like rusted sort of texture, it looks great, but the Spartans would have had their weapons in better condition. And this whole like hand guard and stuff like that, I don't think they really had that. But again, you see the kind of the Spartan triangle, the A, that represented their logo, their emblem for Sparta, that was on their flags, and their weaponry, and obviously like their, you know, their clothes, because that was their national sort of look. But just so you see the size, how big it is. I've used this for the Berserker guy in my Viking epic, my main Berserker, just because he's a lot bigger, so he's got a big ass sword. So yeah, it looks cool. Size is great. When it arrived, this bit was sort of a bit broken off, so I gaffer taped it up, and as long as you don't whack it, you know, you don't even tell. But yeah, that's the Spartan sword. So if you ever see that, I'd recommend that with the dagger. You'd probably get them as like a pair if you wanted to, so you could probably have the holster. This definitely won't fit in the holster, so that's more free. I don't have anything that would fit that because it's so huge. This along with my Viking sword are the two biggest swords I've got. But yeah, you can even hold it like that. It looks pretty badass, okay? All right, so that's the Spartan sword. Let's move on. All right, this next one is an Arabic type sword. It's again really small, but I bought this because a dude sold me a kettle hat for cheap. He gave me a little discount and stuff like that. I had a bargain with him, and then in return to, you know, thank him, I basically bought like another one from his websites or whatever. Again, I thought this was a lot bigger than it was supposed to be, but it kind of fits in the holster quite nice. So again, it's sort of like a backup sword, if you will, because a lot of time, I say even like the ninjas and a lot of like Crusader knights and stuff, they would have had a main sword, obviously, which was what they fought with, and then they'd have a backup dagger or maybe a smaller sword type thing, because it'd be in case the other one broke or got lost or got knocked out of their hand. So yeah, so I got this one thinking it was going to be a really cool like Arabic sort of Persian type sword. They pretend like it's a Crusader one with some Latin on it, but the Romans wouldn't have had this. Crusader knights wouldn't have used this because basically the curvature, they had the straight broadswords a lot of the time. But again, I've got this as a backup for the Arabic kind of Persian scenes like Anatolia and Jordan from my next epic. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about it. It's very like got a cross in it, so it is a bit Christianized, Latinized, if you will. But either way, I still think it looks great. It's got some nice sort of like, you know, color paint, and then I like what they do when they sort of add the little texture to it, you know. So it may even be 3D printed and then painted, I have no idea. Very cheap production, but either way, I don't know. It's kind of cool to have as like a backup, like I said. So yeah, that'll probably be for the Persians. And let's move on to the axes. This is my real Viking sword. So again, it's kind of like a foam rubber, but real, I mean as in like the hilt is real size. The actual size, the size of the blade as well is quite accurate to the real length that would have been. It's got some great sort of Viking kind of designs in here and on there, the patterns. So the Vikings were really into kind of weaving and sort of interweaving kind of carvings and sort of artwork and all that, you know. So they're very artistic people. A lot of people just think they raped and pillaged and, you know, that was it. They were just sort of voyaging and shit, but they did actually invent a lot of sort of, you know, artistic material. The women were very talented, and again, these designs are like, you know, they're really beautiful to look at. So it probably inspired like a lot of like, I mean, maybe inspired by Celtic, but they weren't really interacting with each other. So some of the Celtic and Viking designs are very similar, with this kind of interwoven kind of fabrics and materials and all that. But yeah, this is going to be my main sword for the main guy. It's just big enough. Yeah, it still fits in there, which is great, but I got a new holster now. So the new holster is going to cater for that one because it's obviously the biggest, and it does look like badass, yeah. Alright, that's it for the Viking sword. But yeah, so that's like the size of it, just so you can see if you ever do rent it. I always tell people that this is my biggest one, my best one, but it's my baby and I'm still using my film now. And it looked legit. All right, okay, so that's it for the Viking sword. All right, one little quick one. This is a Spartan dagger. So I originally got this with a shield, thinking that they're kind of bigger sizes than they were, but again, they're kid sizes because you can't get the real stuff on Amazon, let alone like in real life anymore. They'll be very exclusive, expensive items. But again, this is a good for side dagger, you know, in the holster. And I've kind of used it a couple of times, so it'd be good as like a backup, so you could have one sword and then you could have this one. And again, it looks great up close and even far away. It's even got like some scratches in it, but yeah, obviously the size is pretty petty, so this wouldn't pass for a sword, no way, but more of a dagger, you know. It's got a nice little design in it. That's like the Spartan sort of triangle, because that was their main sort of emblem logo, was the upside down triangle. They had that in their shields, they had it in their designs, their patterns. You can see a bit of that in 300, but obviously do some real research if you want to see the real thing. That's it, and that obviously influenced like Greece and Rome later, you know, in the times. All right, but that's it for the dagger. Let's move on. All right, this is just a random bit. This isn't actually a weapon, but this is one of my canes. So originally I got this for my steampunk epic, but since then I've wrapped this kind of nice material around it, and it's now going to be the Byzantine Emperor's sort of cane staff or whatever, because there's a lot of research I did into the Byzantine Empire, and the emperor himself, he always had a sort of cane or a staff, kind of, you know, to show his like power and his wealth and all that. So we would have had real silver or gold or whatever, not plastic from China, Amazon, thanks. But I even used it as a cane for the Joker. So when I did my Batman film and music video, I did my first promo sort of bits with him, and I think he was kind of playing around with it before he actually got like a machine gun towards the end to make it more scary. But this was just his casual one without the red at the time. It was just the original like black. But I think this looks way cooler and it's a lot more shiny now, so it's a bit more authentic. But yeah, that's it for the cane. That's a quick one. Okay, so this pitchfork I got specifically for my Viking epic because the opening battle's got some farmers that rebelled against the Norwegian king, and sadly to say, it does wobble quite a bit. So If you hold it up there, it's kind of a lot better and you can kind of cheat. Again, for stills, it's kind of great. So the texture is not bad, but the problem is that when this plastic stuff arrives, you know, it's always very lightweight and not reinforced in the middle. So it looks kind of ridiculous, like up close, but you know, in a big wide shot, it'll look pretty good. I think this is kind of for a devil type costume or whatever. And I was like, nah, I'm not using it for that. I'm specifically going to use it just for the farmers and I'm not going to have it anywhere else. So, and then once it arrived and I put it together, then I realized why, because you see all that. I mean, that's even like tight and it still wobbles around. Look, wobbling kind of loosens a bit. So not so much a weapon, but if you have any devil costumes or outfits or demons, again, for parties and stills, photo shoots, it's okay or ideal, but not for actual, like, you know, real fighting or acting. But anyway, that's all I had, and that's all I got because it's cheap. Even though like it comes together, so when it arrives in sections, so it fits in small packaging. But that's it for the pitchfork. All right, okay, so that might be it. Okay, so I kind of went crazy with the axes. I probably have more axes than I do swords. I kind of start off with swords with the epics, and then I kind of work my way up into the axes. This one I call the executioner one, because it's kind of scary. It's got this skull in it. Obviously a lightweight plastic, but this is kind of cool. I use it for my berserkers in my opening scene. So the main berserker, he had this one. Or executioner, if you check out my costumes, I've got some of them, and I've got that as the axes, maybe, you know, chopping, sort of heads off kind of vibe. And it's got like the nice point at the end, so there's a bit of like stabbing like that. But yeah, this is pretty authentic size-wise, I'd say. It's got some cool designs in this, you know, in the sort of the hilt, sort of the handle, the grip. And then this is kind of like a skull demon, kind of like forked tongue kind of guy or whatever. But yeah, this one is also for rental for Fat Llama, or if you go to my Facebook page, you know, Costumes for Film and TV, there should be links in all my pages. But yeah, this is the first one, and then let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this was my original Viking epic axe. Originally when it came, this was all black and it was really bare looking. So what I did is I wrapped some of the material cloth that I had left over from my Roman sort of costumes, and then this is actually a skateboard shoelace, so you never know what to look at it. Looks pretty cool. This top bit has come a bit loose sadly, but you know, when you're kind of fighting, you're not going to see that as long as you don't hear it sort of wobbling around. I don't really use this one as much anymore. This is again just for the Viking epic specifically, but I kind of use it as a double axes because obviously the more the merrier. But yeah, this is kind of like my original favorite, and this is kind of more authentic for the Viking kind of look, if you will, and it's got that kind of point in the end there where you can kind of stab people, stuff like that. But again, for stills, it looks great. It's perfect, you know. It's just like if you're going to fight, you have to be aware that it's plastic, it's lightweight, rattles and makes a noise. But yeah, with like dual action, it's awesome. And even these, they fit into the holster as well. So if you ever want a holster, you know, just like let me know, message me, and then, you know, we can work something out. So it's not usually, it doesn't come with, it's kind of rented separate, but in my original Viking costumes, this will be included, okay? But that's the OG axe that I started it all with. All right, let's move on. Right, so this one got a little bit mashed up on my last shoot. It was kind of all well attached at one point. It was even longer, but because it was so flimsy, I had to kind of reinforce it with stuff. But sadly, it snapped off and it hit my TV and it's caused a permanent scratch there. So I've gaffer taped it up, but I don't think I'll be renting this. I just want to show you. It's got the fleur-de-lis top, which I've kind of saved throughout the years from, I don't know where we got it. It was here in the house somewhere, and I just thought that was a neat little addition because again, you could stab it into like bodies and stuff and into people. But sadly, this is pretty much out of commission now with the gaffer tape really obvious, and obviously it's like too flimsy and stuff, and I don't know if I get it fixed. So let's not spend too much time talking about this one. Let's move on. And it rattles. So you can use it to rattle the shaker. Next up, this is one of my latest ones. Again, I bought it because it looked sick. It's got some skull and bones like on here. So I think it's got a mix between kind of a Viking Celtic look and then also a little bit of a pirate look. So whether pirates actually would have had something like this, I doubt. But I got it because it's great for my Viking epic. And even though it's lightweight, as a double sort of axe, you know, when there's a lot of action going on, it looks pretty authentic. So I dig it, even though it's like tiny. Again, the size is accurate because they would have had larger axes, double-handed axes, and then the single-hand ones. So this is obviously a single hand one, you know, you couldn't really do that with it. That would just look ridiculous. So just be aware if you do rent this one, it is very light. But again, for stills, it looks amazing, you know, it looks really cool. So that's kind of why I got it, and I love this design. You know, it's perfect for what I'm sort of doing. And again, I buy cheap stuff because I have so many things to buy and so many things to use and cater for. So either way, that's that axe. Let's move on. Right, so this is basically my best axe. This is really authentic Viking style, the right size as well. This is, again, a rubber, kind of not foam, but strictly rubber. I mean, maybe a bit of foam on the sort of blade there. Slight bearded axe there, if you know what that is. So that's where they could kind of hook stuff and pull up shields out of the way and, you know, jab people with it. But I just love it because I would train with it, and it's got really good feel. It feels so like amazing and authentic. So I've used this as my main one. And again, it's like double axes or on its own with shields. Looks really cool. So I definitely recommend this one if you're going for a good looking axe. And also for any kind of movement. So the action scenes, it's really authentic, like, you know, feeling, if you will, not just looking. But yeah, so obviously I've like worn out the handle a little bit because I've used it a lot in the summer, and I've been practicing for about a year now with this one, and I'm finally using it for the actual film. So yeah, so out of all the axes, I definitely recommend this one. Okay, all right. That might be it for the weapons for now. Maybe I'll show you some spears actually. Okay. Let's move on. Right, I've got one last axe to show you guys. This one looks fantastic. It's even got some Viking insignia, and again, that's why I kind of bought it. It's again the foam rubber. The only issue is that it tends to wobble a bit here at the end because they didn't really reinforce this. So they're selling it obviously for kids, but you know, with me and my budget, I kind of get anything that is sort of, it looks great, and I don't really care what it's made out of and how it handles. But yeah. So when you use it like really fast, you can't really tell, but be careful of that wobble. So if you ever do any action scenes, you're gonna use it, just don't wobble it straight at the camera like that. Sidewise, it could be fine, you know. So again, for stills and kind of general hand movement and practicing, it's ideal, it's perfect. I totally recommend it, but not as good as my main Viking axe, which you've probably seen already. But yeah. You won't get a close-up, but just so you know, that's an authentic Viking symbol. I can't remember what it means, but I was on set the other day at Game of Thrones, and a guy had a t-shirt with that, and I just had a little chat to him about Viking history and all that jazz. It's basically the symbol that represents all the other Norse symbols. So it's the one kind of like whole seeing, all talking, sensing, kind of like, you know, the various runes, if you will, if you know what runes are. So the Nordic Viking runes, they're very important because they're basically a way of communicating, and they're words. You know, they didn't really have written language per se, but they did have runes and rune stones, and they would have used that with incantations or legends if they're retelling stuff, maybe some stonework, but they would kind of use it in their materials and their costumes, on weapons, obviously, like this one. So yeah, it's got nice little sort of triangular like bit at the back, so you kind of switch it around if you wanted, so you could whack something like that, and then you can kind of turn and then, you know, pierce them, or, you know, give them some good damage, you know, maybe even like hit their shield with it. So you'd probably use that against like the skin, the armor, and then if you really wanted to dig in, you can probably like whack someone on the head and then probably pierce something. But that's the real life ones, not this like kiddie foam rubber stuff. But yeah, that's it for the axes. So let's move on to spears. Okay, so this has been a spear that I've had since my Spartan epic, pretty much. So I've been using it over the years for the pirates and all sorts. And it kind of, I just use this as like a broom handle, and then I kind of ordered this piece. So when they advertise it, they obviously have the stick with it, and then you buy it, and then you realize it just shows up with this plastic bit. So again, a bit wobbly because it's not reinforced in there, but I still like the feel of it. It's very big, so it does look pretty scary and intimidating, especially up close. And you know, I'm not doing 3D or anything, and that'll be out of focus, but I just added this bit of rope to give it like a little bit of, you know, character, and also to cover up my gaffer tape there. So gaffer tapes come in handy with a lot of my costumes and shields because you arrive in it, it's like flimsy, so you just try and reinforce it, and it's multi-purpose tape, and it's my best friend, I think, gaffer tape. So it keeps stuff secure. But yeah, that's kind of my spear, and I'm still using it in my current epic. It's fantastic, you know. I mean, obviously real spears have been a lot longer. I worked on Clash of Titans 2 where we had sarissas for the first few days or the first week, and they're 6 to 12 foot, and the 12-foot ones would have been impossible, but we had 6 to 8 feet, and then they ditched them after a couple of days because there's too much hassle running around and basically storing and all that stuff. So we did train with them, we didn't practice with them, and yeah, this is what I've got now. Little baby version, but it's got a big sort of spearhead, surprise surprise. So it's always that kind of weird ratio of sizes where it's either too small or too big or a mix of the two. But yeah, that's the main spear, my OG one. All right, let me show you the other one, my new one. So this is my latest spear. I ordered the spearhead, a bit of drama sort of getting it, like it didn't really arrive. It said it was delivered, Amazon said it was delivered and it wasn't. So I contacted the guy, I was like, yo, where's the spearhead? It said it arrived and it didn't. And then they said that it was sent. And then I was like, well, I want a refund or I want a replacement. And then it arrived a few days later and then I told them it was all good. So this is actually authentic metal, so you could probably do some damage with that if you really want, but the problem is I've had to gaffer tape it here because it would just like fall off. A real thing would be you'd have to Dremel through it, but I don't have like a metal drill bit, you know, so I've just gaffer taped it. And you know, in wide shots, I mean, it doesn't really matter, it just like gives you a bit of weight at the end, so it's a bit more authentic than the other one. The other one's got a longer sort of, you know, like spear tip or whatever, but this is like really cool. You know, like, I mean, it's my latest sort of toy and I'm probably going to do some filming with it tonight. So, all right, so that's it for the spears and let's move on. Now, this is the pilum. This is part of the Roman, part of the Descendant epic. And obviously this was just a bit of sort of skewer or whatever that I've like taped up. And then I added some, again, the material and then some red sort of lace or like a shoelace or whatever around it. And this is another broom handle. So I've employed broom handles quite a bit. Now the pilum was designed originally to basically pierce shields, and then it would be stuck in the shield. So a lot of the time the shield would be redundant and they'd have to lose their shield. So that's why they're designed. So they're a bit like a spear or a javelin, but this was specifically designed by the Romans to kind of kick the butts out of, like, you know, enemies with shields pretty much. You could use it as a stabbing, but then it'd probably be a bit flimsy. So a lot of the time it'd be used as a spear javelin. And then, as I said, it would like break shields sometimes, or if you get that and stuck in someone, obviously it would do some damage too, but that wasn't its main purpose. So they would have had the gladius, the pilum, they would have had the big shields, the scutum or scutum. But yeah, the pilum is basically one of the pinnacle designs to really help the Romans kind of, you know, conquer all the lands that they did. They kicked a lot of barbarians' butt, the Gauls and all that. They would have used this extensively throughout their campaigns. I loved it so much I had to recreate it because you can't really buy it anywhere. This would have actually been in the middle, but because I can't drill in there and I can't redesign that because it's all like lightweight and flimsy, I just had it on the side. But you know, in like action shots you can't really tell, or I hope not anyway. So you wouldn't really use it like a spear like that, like a jabbing one. As I said, it's more like the throwing javelin type. So they had like regiments of like javelin skirmishers. They would have had slingers, if you know what slingers, so where the slingshot was invented. They would have had those guys like sling out sort of rocks and stuff like that. And they hired like foreigners and stuff a lot of times. So when they conquer lands, they'd introduce them into their army, and then they'd have all these different sections. But the main Roman, like, you know, armor or, you know, soldier would have actually had a pilum a lot of the time because they really did conquer and kick a lot of butt. Okay. Moment on to the last spear. Now this spear, again, it's got the fleur-de-lis on the top, which again I found here. I can't remember why we had it and stuff like that, but I kept them for some reason. So this wasn't actually part of the original history. This is fleur-de-lis, which came later in the French Empire when they really expanded and became like quite big. But yeah, again, wrapped around the red material. And that's come a bit loose there because it's seen better days. And then this is just some lace there just to give it a bit of sort of flair and a bit of, you know, kind of, I don't know, funny look or whatever, to spin around. So I've used this a couple times for my epics, but not too much. But I prefer this one because I've reinforced the middle, so it's not this lightweight plastic flimsy thing. So it's a bit more sturdy and you can kind of like jab a bit more than you have to worry about it wobbling as much. But yeah, it still looks really cool and authentic. Don't know if that's on Fat Llama for sale, but for rental, I mean. But yeah, it's part of my extended kind of spears. So I'll probably use it at some point in my next epic. I don't know where yet. We'll see. Okay, all right, I think that's it for the spears. I think that's pretty much mostly it. Okay, so I hope that was useful, and let's move on to shields next. Okay, so I started off with my swords and axes and spears, but now we're going to talk about some shields that I got, because obviously I've done a few epics throughout history, so I needed different types of shields. The real ones obviously would have been a lot bigger. except for my main Viking one, which I'll show you in a minute. But this I got from my Greek epic, so this is the Hellenistic design, but also I've kind of used it for the Persians as well. And why this was really handy, I'll show you, is because a lot of swords can be used like that. So if you've ever seen Troy, Brad Pitt, so Achilles, he kind of had something like that where you could slide the sword in and then always be protected by the shield as well. So I really like this shield because I'm going to reuse it for the Persians, or the Arabic types, or the Saracens in my next epic. Even though it was specifically for the Greek epic, I'm kind of repurposing, because the Byzantine Empire, even though they dominated Greece and owned Greece, they weren't Greek themselves. They're descendants from the Romans, and they kind of incorporated everyone's kind of fighting abilities and basic armor and tactics and weaponry. Yeah, so I've kind of taped up the back to reinforce it. It kind of helps if you sort of put your hand on the back there to keep it a bit more steady. The tape comes off sometimes, but it does look authentic when you kind of have it in one go. All right, so that's the Greek, aka Persian wannabe sort of shield. But let's move on to the next one. Right, so this is my Crusader kind of knight's shield, if you will. This is kind of, again, like a plastic material. When it first arrived, it was super flimsy, so I've reinforced it with cardboard and gaffer taped the hell out of it just to keep it more sturdy, because I was so disappointed when it first arrived. So I had to tweak a lot of this stuff, because obviously the real deal would be way expensive, way heavy, and again, if it's any real metal or shiny surfaces, then it'll have problems in the green screen. So I kind of like stick with kind of this stuff. As long as it looks good, which is always my #1 rule, it's fine. Like even the paint up close doesn't look that amazing, but for wide shots when you're fighting, looks pretty authentic, So again, the size isn't totally accurate, but just another bit of part of history. So these are called buckler shields, and buckler is the middle piece, and that was the metal boss in the middle that would basically connect the shield to make it reinforced on the center. So if you didn't have that, it'd probably like break in one go, and as soon as anything would whack it, it would just crack and fall apart. Not that it matters with the plastic, but just to give you an idea about the real history. So I've used this in my Crusader epic, in my Pirate epic, I think, the Viking epic, and then now I'm going to use it in my next one as well. It's multi-purpose, and for different sort of armies and battles throughout the story. Okay, so that's my, I say, like knight shield, let's call it, the buckler shield. But let's move on. Right, this next one, I've actually taken off my Viking sort of patterns that I've done there. My whiskers just walked by. But yeah, this is kind of, even though it's plastic, the wood painting or the finish looks really authentic. And again, it's got the buckler in the middle. But the only issue is that it's only got one hand grip in the back. And if you just hold it like that, it's quite flimsy and wobbly. So my technique is I hold it like that, and I try not to show that to camera as much. So yeah, you can see you can kind of like move around, and it's a lot more grippy that way. It's a shame it doesn't work like that. Unless you got a big ass hand, then that might work. But yeah, look at this, made in China, my old Amazon cheap friend. So yeah, it looks kind of cool when I put the Viking patterns. I just pulled them off tonight because I'm doing some extra filming without them. And that's kind of, cheap design to put on, but the Viking shields would have had a lot more sort of colors and patterns, designs on them. So this is like a Viking symbol and all that. I know it's done with like Sharpie, but either way, it looks pretty like cool once it's on. So I had one on the other side too, but I pulled them off for tonight for the filming. Again, the buckler center, so to keep it all legit. It's actually quite sturdy. It's not too bad. It's not as flimsy as the other one, the Crusader kind of knight sword, or the knight's shield. But yeah, that's that one. Okay, so this is the Roman shield that I've got. That's got some of the Roman sort of numerals on it, some of the lettering. That was kind of like the emblem for the Roman army, basically when they're out in like battles and sieges and stuff like that. This is basically a kind of a gladiator type shield. The only issue is the way they've designed the grip. I've had to reinforce all this as well, and reinforce the grips because it was just cheap and fell apart. But I also like splattered some blood on it, so I don't think I'll be using this in my Viking epic. Maybe I will, I don't know. The only issue is that it should be faced upwards like that, if you see what I mean. So that was the only hassle that I had with that, which is kind of annoying because I can't really hold it like that the whole time. So yeah, that wasn't well designed. Obviously cheap Amazon China crap, and also the very lightweight plastic. But I used it for my Roman gladiator sort of scenes, or even like for my Roman sort of soldiers section. But yeah, this was not the scutum. That was the big sort of rectangular one that they used. Very heavy but very sturdy and very strong, and there would have been a lot hide behind it with lots of arrows avoiding them. And yeah, I hope you like the fake blood because it's very sticky and very gross. So I keep this separate. I even like touching it right now. I'm getting some of the fake blood on it. I haven't really washed it off. But yeah, that's how it's supposed to look, that way up. Yeah, they're all for rental. It's up to you what you want to do with them. If you want it clean, we'll just have to wipe it off. All right, well, let's move on. Okay, let's get to my best shield, which is the most authentic and best feeling one. So this is again like a foam rubber. This isn't plastic, isn't flimsy. I don't have to reinforce it. It's only got the one handle, one grip, but it looks really legit. And also I've been training with it and I've really been buffing up my arm, my shoulder, my left side, because obviously my right is my sword axe kind of arm. But this one looks really good because it's got the Valknut there, which is again a Viking symbol, and this is like the gateway to basically the afterlife. It's a sign from Odin basically, and I've used that in my Viking epic as part of like the whole ghost sequence, where it's kind of like seeing into the other realms and all that. So this is a transitional symbol, the logo, to go from, you know, earth to heaven or whatever, Valhalla if you will, but basically the spirit world pretty much. Then it's got some dragons on here. I really like that red. So this is pretty cool. I try to get a good like Viking shield for a bit, and this is the best one that I found for the price. I'm still debating whether I'll get another one because I do like some of the other designs, but again, they'd probably be a bit small. Some of these are only for decoration, but for me, it's kind of really important for battle because then I can kind of like whack people with it. You know, obviously like no one's there because it's green screen, but again, it looks really, really good. It feels really good. Very, very sturdy. So I do recommend the foam rubber ones over metal regarding the weapons and the shields, just because they're just so much more stronger and durable, and the weight as well, just you don't have to act as much. So in the training, if you ever see my Viking training videos, I kind of go like full tilt with like the axe and all that, and it looks really cool. So this is my number one baby, I tell you that. Out of all the shields and stuff that I bought, this is one of my favorites. So up close to kind of, you know, some of the bits you can tell that it looks fake, and especially when you touch it, but what matters is how it looks in a wide shot. All right, okay, so that's it for the shields. That's it pretty much for all the weapons. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it helps if you decide for like rental or whatever, because some people, they just constantly ask me questions like, what's it like, what's that size like, all this stuff. So that's why I'm making this video. I've been thinking about it for a while, and this is to show people like directly about the shields and all that. And now I've got Viking text on my computer, so I'm going to add like a nice little video. I've already done kind of the latest promo with all my weapons, and now this is the extension of it, baby. Yeah, okay, all right, so see you around, and maybe have some rentals. That'd be nice. I need some business. Cool. All right, that's it for now. Peace, and Last Tabaz is out. Yo. So I'll probably do one of costumes next time, but I just wanted to get some of the weapons out of the way. But they look kind of cool. I kind of like them, you know, like again, as I said before, I have to kind of buy lots of stuff in bulk because I can't afford to buy specific pieces that are very expensive. And again, real metal is no good to me because of the shiny surfaces. I found that out way back when I did some with my samurai sword, which I thought was so cool, and then basically it kept on disappearing because when you key it out with the green screen or the blue screen at the time, it just disappears. So you have to be really aware of shiny surfaces, reflective, metal, silver, stuff like that. You can use an anti-flare spray, which I've tried a couple times. That helps, but basically I've got a couple of helmets that are really good, but all the rest is kind of, you know, very plasticky. But looks authentic. That's the reason why I get them. If they didn't look good, then I didn't buy them. So I pretty much like scoured all of Amazon now, so I know what's good, what's not.